too. I think it's great.
Yeah. Did you see the new website?
No.
I just changed it.
The colors.
Yeah, exactly. Just change out the colors, change out the logo, simple stuff.
Okay, it should be live. You want me to check on my computer so you don't have to?
Okay, yeah, that'd be great. Thank you. Yeah, I mean, we should think about getting merch.
We got to do merch ASAP.
So if we want to finalize, or if we want to do merch, we should just finalize the logo before we do that. But I'm cool with it.
I love it. I mean, I know you brought up the cactus thing, but I don't think that's a deal breaker.
We got a whole bunch. Oh God, on that bandana, there's a whole bunch of assets that we can pull from. So
Other types of cactus?
not even cactuses. Just there's goddamn, let me see if I can find it. Figma. You know, I'm slowly learning Figma, and it's getting better.
Check.
You're live and it sounds much better.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem. Do we close this door?
Yeah, that'd be great. Yeah.
Close it?
Yeah, I would close it. Yeah. Should just go ahead and get started. I mean,
We're going to give it a couple more minutes.
Yeah.
we can give it 5 more minutes. But
Yeah, then we can just get started.
yeah, we'll just get started because I want to do this. Want to mainly get this content, you know, for the Filecoin community.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think, I forgot, I don't know if you remember, I posted in the Orbit Slack on Filecoin. We can post all of our stuff. I think I did some of it, but we need to make sure it's up to date.
I was really slow on doing the videos from last time. I did generate some videos though.
Yeah, I saw them, I think put them on Twitter, right?
Yeah.
Nice.
Put them on there. They're on the Convergence YouTube channel. Hopefully some people show up and eat our pizza. It's from Pine House. It's amazing.
Yeah, there was this bandana from. Oh, here it is. I fucking found it. Yeah. Yeah, like we could do a boot. We could do. There's a boot. We could do a just like a I don't know if we could. We could do a film reel. Horseshoe. Oh, that's a good one. We should do a horseshoe. Oh yeah.
You don't like the cactus?
I don't know, the cactus is pretty cool actually. I spent so much time, you know, I spent like at least 20 minutes on that cactus, so I don't wanna like get rid of it, you know. But it, you know, I've never seen a cactus here in Texas like that. I've lived here for 2 years, I guess.
Well, you moved here after the freeze.
Oh no. Did you guys have cactuses like that? Are you serious?
Really?
I mean, maybe not specifically like that, but big ones. That would be kind of similar.
Yeah. I've got some like skinny ones that are kind of shaped like that.
Mm-hmm.
They're
Yeah.
not like the ones in Arizona.
No, definitely not like that. Yeah. If you go a little more south, like to past San Antonio, then you start getting like a little bigger.
Yeah, we need to do merch.
Yeah.
Um,
Some merch.
We're gonna have dope t-shirts, the dopest t-shirts, and then
Totally.
what's something that everybody at IPFS, what's some merch that they forget?
RFID tags.
No, fuck those. Fuck those. You know, Allie told us about those, and I was listening to her, but I don't know. I feel like I don't know.
Let's tone it down with the tracking.
Let's not broadcast. Let's just
Yeah.
not broadcast radio
Or-
waves all the time.
Yeah.
Or so wait, maybe there wasn't RFID tags. It was
NFC tags.
NFC tags. Sorry. Yeah, not trying to try doing it tracking. No, I think it was NFC, right? She
It was
had
NFC,
one from
yeah.
that one startup deal.
Yeah, so you like scan your phone and it like links you to it. It's like, you know.
Basically, like a QR code, basically. Yeah.
It's like our website's gonna be good enough to where you're gonna remember it off the top of your head.
Usually people show up like 30 minutes late, right?
They like come up from the, yeah.
That's true.
We're in the dead of summer too, so that's a hard one. That's a hard one to make.
So hot outside.
Mm-hmm.
Don't blame people for not going outside right now. Bandanas, we could do bandanas.
Yeah.
That would be
Yeah, bandanas is a good idea. I literally have like a square that we can use that I copied off of.
Nice. Yeah.
that'd be sweet.
Yeah, I guess t-shirts.
Yeah, t-shirts and hoodies. I get a lot of that stuff. Now I have a printer that's really good, like amazing quality. It's cheap.
Cool. Well, I guess we should get started, right?
Yeah, we can get started.
Get the last check there.
Yes, so welcome everyone. This is the 6th Austin Orbit Meetup. So thank you for being here. And a quick agenda for today is we're gonna walk through. Oh, this is old. Sorry. Oh, this is the wrong one. Oops. We're gonna walk through. I had an in-person meeting with the entire Lotus team a couple weeks ago.
The entire Lotus team?
The entire Lotus team was here in Austin. It was their very first time that they had ever all met in person in one place, and they chose Austin. And they invited some storage providers to come and talk to them. And so it was me and a couple other local storage providers. And yeah, it's really interesting. So I'm gonna walk through that. Then just gonna kind of talk about, kind of leave it open for any questions regarding, Filecoin mining and storage providing, and just kind of general discussion. The next event is going to be July 18th, I believe, the 3rd Tuesday of every month we do this. Yeah, if we want to finalize this logo, we should take a vote on that, I think, pretty soon, because we want to start doing merch. Personally, I'm in favor of keeping it, but maybe we could do a couple other options and let people decide.
Sure.
Okay.
I'm leaning towards keeping it too.
Yeah.
But
yeah, it doesn't hurt.
Yeah, it doesn't hurt to do more.
To do a couple more, and we'll do a vote next time. So that is to be continued. The Austin Orbit website. Let's see if we can actually go there quick.
Oh yeah.
This is the website specifically for this Austin group. Looking really good. It's been updated recently thanks to Alex. And yeah, really cool. So here you'll find the GitHub, which will be updated with all of the presentations. So that's great. All the slides can be found there, austinorbit.io. And then we also have a Slack group, so you guys can join us and let us know about any topics that you want to hear about, or join us as an organizer. We are sponsored by the Filecoin Foundation. Also, Convergence is my company. OpenLinks is Alex and Logan's company, and then Capital Factory is also a sponsor. So really appreciate our sponsors for this event. And of course, please, if you can, take the survey. We updated it with a few questions, so always looking for feedback. That's about it. So I'm gonna go over my meeting with the Lotus team. It was really, really interesting. So again, Dante Polari, I'm the CEO of Convergence Inc. and full stack developer, Web3 architect, and you can learn more at cloudforest.cloud is our newest landing page. So yeah, some of the issues that we discussed from this Lotus meeting, again, I was with a couple other storage providers. It was really interesting. They were, again, meeting for the first time in person. They really wanted to get a taste of, you know, what issues storage providers were having with Lotus specifically, kind of what were the biggest pain points, and you know, looking to see how they could make Lotus better. And then also, you know, they have a lot of updates that they're planning, so they were trying to kind of feel out whether those updates are going to be, you know, well received with storage providers or not. We'll talk about some of those, but one of the things one of the storage providers raised is support for ARM chip architecture, because right now Lotus is really geared towards AMD, and I think there's probably some SPs out there running some, you know, Intel chips, but I think mainly it's like the 7742 AMD chips, kind of the previous generation.
X64.
yeah, X64. But with the ARM, one thing that one of the SPs raised is that you can actually, you know, there's more, you can kind of fit more into a smaller form factor. You can kind of get more, you know, especially the new ARM, the brand new ARM chips that they just released, I believe, are, you know, they have way more cores. There's like built-in support for graphics and like all kinds of things in like this, you know, really tiny form factor. So, you know, obviously for storage providers, like how many U of rack space you use up is really important. You know, all of those things, you know, the price of the individual chips and all of that really, you know, becomes a factor. So having ARM support will be really useful for energy efficiency also. And apparently the Lotus team has tested ARM and it's working in testnet. So that was good to hear. They're going to be releasing some reference architecture, like, you know, reference builds basically, hopefully pretty soon. That was one of the requests. Yeah, one of the issues, the other issue was frequency of required updates. I think Lotus pushes at least one required update per quarter. So every 3 months, you know, you're pretty much forced to update within by a specific epoch. And, you know, again, it's kind of scary because it's kind of like changing out your engine of your airplane mid-flight. You know, it's stressful. You know, this is your company. This. You know, for those that don't know, Lotus is the main library that communicates with the Filecoin blockchain, and then also with the storage provider's hardware. So, storage provider has a bunch of hard drives, like a ton of hard drives, right, in these big hard drive arrays that are connected to usually a ceiling cluster, which is
Are they JBoss?
They can be.
What is like if you're a big, like what are they doing at Picnic?
I mean, so the newest probably, like, most sought after setup right now is called Core Vault from Seagate,
Mm-hmm.
which is I believe
It's a JBoss,
yeah, and it's 2.5 petabytes.
How many disk drives?
In an array, I think it's, I should know this, I think it's around, I want want to say 80 or like 96 or something. I'm not sure.
So 96 times 22, because that's their platters, right?
Yeah.
So it's SATA.
Yes.
What do you say
well,
about that?
but it's also multi-arm SATA. So like you can have multiple read and writes going on at the same time on both sides of the platter, and like there's all kinds of really cool stuff going on with that. Plus,
Yeah,
Core Vault is self-healing, so like it'll hold some of it in cache. It'll like if it encounters an error, it can basically rebuild that whole sector from scratch.
What do you know what you're running, like say a core they're running say a Core Vault, right? What is like you're saying you're holding 44 terabytes, right? So how do you what is the storage medium that you're even like putting it on? Okay, so like is it ZFS even? Is it like ZFS?
It is. It's ZFS. Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
So is it a RAID? So then, if you're a provider, do you sometimes like sell? Okay, this is stored in a RAID 4, to where you've got a lot of backup on this ZFS array, or is most of the time in a RAID 0? Like, what do you how does that work?
I think the configuration's a bit different than kind of normal RAID because Filecoin, first of all, you're basically required to store a separate off-chain backup and the actual on-chain copy, right? And the on-chain partition needs to be, I think, partitioned completely separately, right? I don't even know if you store them in the same unit, basically. Probably not.
So there's nothing like requiring you to have that backup, really, right?
Not really, but yeah, it's if you go offline, you get slashed. So
Exactly, right.
It's the chain incentives.
So if you go offline and you have a backup ready to go, and it's like you're down for like 6 hours, you're okay?
Yeah,
Okay.
you have I think you have 24 hours to resubmit the proof. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, and the hardware stuff, I'm more of a software person.
I'm just curious. Yeah, you know way more than
Yeah.
me. So okay, so you have your system, you're storing it. Yeah. So okay, you have your system, your Core Vault, right? Do you know what software you store the storage on? Like, how do you?
It's all included in Lotus, I believe.
Oh, it's Lotus. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
So again, like your typical.
You're running a Kubernetes instance.
You can, yeah. A lot of times they're running virtualized containers.
Okay.
Yeah.
I would hope.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I would hope that's common.
Yeah. Usually they do virtualization. So basically, like the setup is you have your main Lotus node, right? That is on kind of like a standard, virtual container, right?
It's your big boy.
That's like your main actor, right? That is talking to, it's talking to Boost, which is the market node, which is what actually basically creates the deals and like manages the deal flow. That then talks to Lotus. Lotus then is really the kind of coordinator for all of the workers, and so you have different workers for different portions of the sealing process, right? So there's window post, there's there's I think 3 or 4 different basically
processes.
Hash computations that you need, right? One of them is really, really CPU intensive. One of them is more GPU intensive, right? And so those workers are usually totally separate
nodes
in hardware, like bare metal, right? Usually, I think what's common now is the SPs will have a sealing cluster that is just for sealing, and it's shared between any other. If you have multiple miners in your data center, they all use the same sealing cluster basically, and then that is nice for like sealing as a service, is something that you could offer.
Right.
Yeah, and then you've got, you know, these other workers that are all connected, usually connected to your Lotus node, right? Like hard connected, right?
Locally.
Locally, and yeah, and then those workers are, you know, writing to your storage, and so.
How often do you have to do the seal?
The seal only happens really once. I think the minimum deal duration is 6 months. The maximum right now is 18 months. And then you can either extend that so you don't have to reseal, or it'll expire, in which case you have to reseal. Yeah, and there's a lot of interesting conversations going on about, you know, should that max deal duration be longer? I think actually they may have increased it, or they're talking about increasing it to 3 years, I think. There's also talk about making the minimum way lower, which, you know, again, we'll get into it. There's some interesting conversations going on in that area. But yeah, again, so you've got this, like, you know, you've got a lot of equipment, right? Like you're investing a lot of money. A lot of this equipment is kind of sitting there doing nothing until you need to seal, right? But some of it has to always be on, right? It has to, you're actually resubmitting proofs every 24 hours that you're still storing the data. And then you also then, if you get they call a winning post, that's your block reward. So if like the network pings you with a winning post, you have to respond within 24 hours or you don't get your block reward, right?
Separate process.
So you need to make sure like and I think depending on like when you actually initiate the server, that's what sets the clock of like every 24 hours. So if you start your instance like at midnight, right? Like every night at midnight is when your winning post could potentially come, right? And so like based on that, you have to really plan your updates around when winning post happens and all these other things, right? Yeah, so like Lotus is you know, it's given a lot of people a lot of issues, I think. It's finicky. Some of the other issues people said, I mean, obviously the size of the logs. I mean, we've run just basically the light version of Lotus, which is just the daemon in the background. And those logs, like without, you know, the right settings, can easily go up to like 2 terabytes, like within a few days. I mean, like very quickly you can fill up a good amount of space with just the logs. So that's another issue. Compiling Lotus is also like another really big discussion right now, because it would be ideal to have like pre-compiled build that everyone could just use that pre-compiled build. That way, you know, almost like a Docker, you know, kind of solution where at least you know it's uniform. But there are some underlying issues with doing that. And I mean, yeah, you can go on the Lotus Slack and, you know, ask them questions about that. But basically, you have to compile your own version of Lotus, and so obviously that means everybody's binary can be a little bit different, and
nobody's nodes work the same.
Yeah, that's you know, if your environment's different, it's hard to debug, you know, because then you have to like explain, okay, here's how I compiled my binary, not just what version am I running, but, you know, here's how I compiled the binary, here's my environment, here's all this stuff that isn't going to be the same between everybody. And what you see is like a lot of these daemons are just getting out of sync, and like they don't really have an answer for why, you know, like, because they're all syncing with the chain, right? So if your chain is out of sync on your local version, it's going to cause issues in other areas of Lotus.
Because doing an exploratory, that's like, wow. Do they have any information on that?
They don't really know why. Like again, and I mean, it's no surprise when everyone's running different binaries, right? I mean, it's like almost impossible to track that down. Could be a number of reasons, but it's definitely something that people are reporting more.
It's a good thing that they're moving to ARM, because that'll give them a broadened. It's good because the binaries are different, because hardware and I/O and software is going to be different, and so you're going to have differences. Right. So it's good that they're getting ARM to have more.
Yeah, well, they're building ARM support. That doesn't mean everyone's going to switch to ARM, right? You know,
No.
But
it'll mean that they'll have more of a pool though to pull from. If the ARM ones are in sync, because there's problems with x64.
That's a very good point.
Yeah, there's a lot of crap in x64
Yes, it's like it's hard to track down. Yeah, exactly.
So Picnic was probably the ones interested in ARM, right?
No, actually, it was a local storage provider down in San Antonio. They're small, like they are just getting into, I think, a co-hosting facility, and so that's why it's really important for them to like decide what architecture they're going with, because they're going to start paying for rack space. You know, do they need a full rack? Do they need a fifth of a rack? It's like
a lot of the big services, they all use ARM now. I don't know if you knew that. But
yeah, I know like Amazon's starting to move towards it.
They've been on that. Yeah. Cloud.
It's I mean, I think it's definitely intriguing for sure. I think it's awesome.
Oh yeah, we gotta get away from x64.
Yeah, I agree.
It's just old architecture.
Yeah, I mean, it'll be around for a while just because, people put investments into it and they expect those investments to last 5 years, at least to last them at least 5 years. So, yeah.
To be honest, could you think 10 years ago that we would even think about this? And now we actually have big players that are like Lotus, who can compile that's awesome. But because they can use services that are just put that cool ARM node on their desk, and then they're like, okay, let's
crazy, right?
Yeah. And it's efficient. It's very efficient.
It is. I mean, it's amazing architecture.
Yeah. Just like a RISC-V, like an old processor coming back.
Right. Yeah.
I like it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's cool. Yeah. So there's other issues, but I think those are the main ones that we touched on in that meeting. I wanted to give also kind of the perspective that I came into this with, because one of my companies is a storage provider, totally separate company. The other company is a software developer that onboards data onto Filecoin, which communicates with with Lotus. So it has a Lotus node included, but it's just the light daemon. So more of just the CLI for Lotus. So we're kind of coming at it from both sides, onboarding data and then storing the data. And so, again, it's really kind of interesting time right now, because, again, a lot of these, if you're going to be a storage provider right now in, June 2023, you want Filecoin Plus deals, right? You need them actually, because the price of Filecoin is so low that you're not making enough back on standard deals, right? So what's actually happened is a lot of miners are sitting on these pretty massive supercomputers that run the ceiling, right? And they're sitting on Filecoin. It's like collateral is not an issue as much as I think a lot of people have made it out to be. The storage providers have the Filecoin. It's just that they're not sealing it to the chain, right? So if you look at like Phil Fox and you see there's like whatever it is today, 16 or 12 exabytes dedicated to the chain. There's way more that could be available on Filecoin. It's just that they're not turning on those supercomputers because they're resource intensive until they actually have that Filecoin Plus deal lined up, right? And so it's kind of, again, it's a response to kind of the market. At the same time, that means that there's other services that they're not really able to provide because sealing can take a good amount of time. Sometimes it takes weeks to seal. And so if you don't have that, sitting in like committed capacity, ready for snap deals to plug into it, it's just way slower market, right? And
it's more expensive.
Yeah, and a slower market will have less demand, right? And so the whole problem with the Filecoin community right now, or the Filecoin ecosystem, is that there's not enough demand, really, for the price to start to rise, right? And so you get this kind of like vicious cycle where, the price is down, so there's not enough demand, so the miners are kind of in a pattern that optimizes their resources, but also makes it a less desirable market to, participate in because it's slower. Yeah, so that was one of the things that I brought up to the team. Also that, my company is going more towards a consumer, we're going to be working in the enterprise space too, but also trying to open up Filecoin for consumers. And that would mean that you need a faster market, right? And it also would bring more scale. And so, again, the big issue that I raised with them is that, again, there needs to be a kind of demand pool, right, of deals kind of waiting for storage providers so that once their sectors are sealed, they can snap that deal right into their sector. And there's there's a couple projects out there, Estuary, which now that team is working on Delta, which is kind of like an updated version of Estuary that is supposed to be like a marketplace for deals, like an auction for deals essentially. And we need more projects like that to create kind of these demand pools that new storage providers can kind of just get up and running and have deals. Because my miner, we didn't have any deals for a long time, and this is before Filecoin Plus was even a thing, right? It was just hard to get you have to go out and sign up these customers, right? And have them sign a contract. Like none of this is on chain or decentralized, right? Like this is standard, traditional.
Yeah. Yeah, you have to trust them with their data, or they have
to trust you with their data.
And this whole shenagle of a process, it's a big process, but it really makes sense because what you're doing is huge.
It's needed. I mean, you've seen the hacks that have gone on recently, and like the ransomware. Like, if all your stuff was on Filecoin, like you just ignore that ransom request. You recover your data from Filecoin backup. You're back online. You switch out your keys, and you're like back online. It's in terms of redundancy, Filecoin is a great idea, especially because it is pretty relatively cheap.
It's
for now.
It's remarkable. Yeah. So there's got to be offerings happening soon of, okay, we know the sealing process problem. It is intensive, right? So let's lock up however much frequency you need to have good deals. Because I've noticed with some of the services I'm using, the deals don't happen when they say they should. And so then it's just sitting there,
right, and
it says the deals aren't going through. So just let's have a service that's more expensive,
right?
And you lock up that firepower when you need it, and then people who want that nicer service, they can get it. But people who want the simpler stuff, they can pay the less.
Yeah, exactly. I think actually Protocol Labs is looking at creating more of like a user-friendly app that anybody can use, that maybe they do pay, you know, for that service. But it, you know.
Yes, Web3 storage is one of them that they made. Yeah,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
it's got.
Yeah, I've seen some slides where they literally are talking about swiping a credit card, converting that into fill, and doing everything, doing the whole deal flow for you, you know. And it'll be a paid service. Basically what my company does, Cloud Forest, they're talking about building basically the same things except open source, which is cool. Yeah, so, you know, there's definitely demand for kind of like, you know, if you're a company, like, you're a big company, you want to pay for this stuff. Like, you don't want it to be too cheap, right? Because you want assurance. Like, you want to be able to hold these people's, you know, feet to the fire if something happens, right? And the thing that really allows you to do that is paying them, you know.
One thing that we heard was the price was so low that people didn't think that it was serious. So
Yeah. I mean, there's a long educational process with Filecoin. You know, you know, the fact that it's so cheap makes people suspicious of it. Yeah, so there's a lot of issues like that.
yeah. Do you know how different it is compared the process that you just described? How different is it compared to the same process that a big storage provider normally would be taking, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I think right now, most of them, most likely, are either sending hard drives for their clients to fill up and then sending them back like a shuttle, or
that makes sense.
yeah, because egress fees, you know, if you're moving tons of data over a network, you know, it can be a nightmare. I think that's probably the most economical, is just go there with some hard drives, even fly there with some hard drives, grab the data, go back to the data center, you know, upload it, generate the car files. There's data prep. You gotta generate the car files, then have it talk to the market node to make the deal, have your miner ready to accept that deal from the market node, and then, you know, plug it into the
I would love to
storage.
see like the minimum viable hardware needed to be like an X size
Mhm.
provider, right?
Mhm.
And like there's tons of snowball guides on how you get a snowball from A to B, right?
Mhm.
Like, you know, is there a guide that somebody's created on Filecoin? Like Alex and I saw one of somebody building a miner. And it was actually the smallest amount you needed,
Mhm.
but I wanted to see the technical run.
Sure. Yeah, there's a few now, I think. I know that they just updated the storage provider docs, and I think that there's a few more like quick starts in there now. And that was one of the things that, you know, we made clear to the Lotus team, that they should provide more reference architectures for people to look at in terms of here's what it would cost, here's the hardware, here's, you know, the kind of energy, you know, output it's gonna generate, and here's how much you could expect, you know, to make back over, you know, time with X number of terabytes or whatever. Yeah.
So you're a developer and you push data onto Lotus.
Mhm.
So what are the advantages? Like, in my opinion, as a developer, there's a lot of advantages to leverage IPFS and Filecoin. So what, as a developer, how can you utilize Lotus? Okay, so like you have a light node that you were talking about, and so is that like passing data to another node to store it? Or?
Yeah, it's more communicating with the market node of the miner. So the market node is like owned by the miner, essentially, but they actually extracted it out, so now it's called Boost. It's basically the market node. It's not in Lotus anymore. But when you on the miner side, when you spawn your Lotus node, you also spawn a Boost node alongside of that. That's your market node, right? So on the other side, then on the onboarding side, you also have a Lotus Lite node that's able to communicate. You have to actually like hard code in almost the address of the miner, the storage provider's market node that you want to talk to. Yeah.
Because some people's boost configurations are probably going to be vastly different than others, and so wow.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So
it's insanely complex. Like
the boost does the reputation balancing and all that, or does it do it like in hand with Lotus?
That's a good question. I think Lotus is the main one responsible. I mean, part of the reputation is your power, adjusted power, which is, I think, how long the miner's been online with, no faults, right? And then how many terabytes are you storing? Are those deals Filecoin Plus or committed capacity? All of that gets factored into this. So you have your raw byte power. Maybe I have like a petabyte of raw byte power, but my quality adjusted power is like 1.25 petabytes. So the raw byte power, or the quality adjusted, will be always higher usually than the actual raw bytes that you have. So that your power, again, if you store Filecoin Plus, you get 10x the power essentially, right? So if you're storing 100 terabytes on chain, that's worth a petabyte of power, essentially, something like that. Yeah.
Okay. Oh, okay. Is it like condensed or something? The way the hashes form in the chain is like condensed, where you can store data on your.
What's all the block reward payout?
Oh, it's just for the block.
It's just to
reward.
calculate.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So the more power you get, the more likely you are to get block rewards. Yeah. So again, one of the use cases I described is that you're going to start to have these kind of dedicated retrieval. Again, Filecoin, it requires like a long educational process. You can't even once people sign up, if you're just talking about cold storage, they can't really see anything. It's hard for them to know unless they're really good at blockchain and they want to go to the block explorer and look at the deal, IDs and make sure that this deal went through and all this stuff. You can validate it on chain, but most enterprise customers are not savvy enough to do that. And so you're kind of just trusting that this company that you just gave all your data to is actually doing what they're supposed to do with it. So that's why there's a big demand for retrieval, and I think that's why Protocol Labs and Filecoin Foundation are looking to build more UIs, that can at least give customers something to look at. So the thing is, when you get these kind of retrieval, servers or dedicated retrieval systems, what you're also probably, you're going to get, first of all, requests for all kinds of other features, right? So we can see our files, cool, but I want to share this file with somebody else in the company, right? Or I want to change the role, the access controls on this file, or I want to preview video files, or there's all these other features that they're going to request, right? And also if you have that retrieval, you have to track, especially for enterprise, who's viewing these files and when, right? And so based on that, you're going to get this demand to just back up that whole retrieval dashboard, right? To take a snapshot of the server and back that up, right? And so if you're doing these snapshots, you want that to be on a daily or weekly or monthly, backup schedule. Usually it's daily, right? You get daily backups, so if you get hacked, you can just restore the image, the server image, and move on, right? But Filecoin's minimum deal duration is 6 months. So if I store that backup, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense for that deal to last for 6 months necessarily if I have to store another one tomorrow, and the only thing I really need to store is the difference between today and tomorrow, right? So that's a really small file probably, you know, the diff is pretty small. And like, does it really make sense for these miners to store that for 6 months? Just the diff, you know? And so again, that brings up these issues of kind of just the use, probably the use cases for Filecoin that are gonna be more in demand are these shorter duration deals, but more of them, you know? And so I brought up, you know, the concept of basically doing these like 3-day deals that expire within 3 days, but they renew with a new, you know, with the new snapshot, which will most likely be bigger than the older snapshot, right? So the data, the amount of data you're getting over time grows. There's more deals, less, you know, duration of the deals, but you can still have a contract in place, you know, with the company that says you're gonna, you know, use us for a year and a half or however long, right?
That makes sense for like data that, if you have like a lot of the data stored on Filecoin right now, as we all know, it's like large data sets for NASA and stuff.
Yes.
So those data sets don't change. They don't want them to change.
Right.
So those use cases, especially for like the low cost, you know, low cost Filecoin,
Right.
is for data that you don't want to query it.
Like a tape replacement, like a tape storage.
100%. It's not really queryable. But like
Right.
you're talking about Filecoin deals that are more, so like what's the retrievability of those? Like how does retrievability work with Filecoin in your scenario? Because I was thinking what you were thinking.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and my thing is, okay, if you're gonna do retrieval anyway, you have to host it somewhere. You have to host your retrieval somewhere, right? So just host it on a standard server, right? Doesn't have to even be big. Like we're talking less
It's
than
an NGINX server.
like I mean less hard bare metal than what is in here, right? Like 8-core CPU.
Yeah, that's
So are you guys talking about Filecoin Saturn at all for that, for the retrieval?
No, not really. I mean, so again, this is I don't know if you need Saturn for this, right? Because because here's the thing, okay? You're gonna have the retrieval, which means you need to back up that retrieval, right? That retrieval system, they're gonna keep asking for more features, and you're gonna need to back that up, right?
Sorry, so when we're talking about retrieval, we're talking about more than just like retrieving a file from Filecoin. You're talking about like
when I talk about retrieval, I mean the consumer is able to like go to an app or go to a web page and view the files that they have uploaded to Filecoin.
Quickly,
right?
within time.
Quickly,
Yeah. Gotcha.
right. I personally don't think it makes sense to query the chain every time your customer wants to view the files that they uploaded to Filecoin. It makes more sense to use a server. A server is literally for serving files, right? So give them a server, right?
Isn't that what Saturn is?
No, Saturn, well,
Yeah, it's the closest one to you.
yeah. Saturn is more of a network. Again, it's a bunch of nodes, but it's more of a distributed, you know, model. But it's mainly, again, a node that is sitting there ready to request your file from Filecoin.
So
It downloads your file from Filecoin to a Saturn node, and then you talk to the Saturn node via IPFS, and you grab your stuff.
It's
right?
a Filecoin node with souped up hard drives.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. You've got a 3-tier array of the coolest hard drives ever. You've got slow hard drives, faster hard drives.
Sure.
You've got the NVMe attached straight to it,
Mm-hmm.
and
Yeah.
the Cloudflare of Filecoin.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's exciting.
Yeah. So.
But yeah, so what are you seeing? Right? If you're
Yeah.
seeing
So
that.
the way. Hey, how's it going?
Not many people.
Yeah. No. It's
Ah.
okay. Grab some pizza.
It must have been the LLMs and Fiesta that took everyone.
Yeah, that or it's just so hot. I don't But thanks for coming. We're talking about Lotus. I had a meeting with the Lotus team, and we're talking about retrieval. Basically, again, if you're going to have a system, you have to upload your files somewhere to get them on Filecoin, right? I think that makes more sense to just be a standard server, right? Then when your customer wants to retrieve that data, they just go to their server, right? The thing is though, you need to back that up somewhere, right? So I think it's
what customer are you talking about?
really any enterprise customer, right? For example, I have a client who has a bunch of other clients that they store sensitive data for, right? It's all kind of similar kinds of data because it's like basically the same service that they provide, but they're storing sensitive data for multiple customers, right? And they're having the conversation now of, should we be using Microsoft or Google Drive, like shared folders for that, right? And they really don't want to use either because, like Google and Microsoft could potentially have access to that, or those clouds can go down, right? And that's the problem is if you have kind of a Web 2 solution, which is basically just a dedicated server, and it's just one provider, like even if you have backups, if the entire provider goes down, that means your backup goes down too, right?
All of Amazon, all of like S3, a good portion of it went down like last month.
Yeah, they go down. I mean, Microsoft went down for like 26 hours or something like last year, and then the last 2. I mean,
that's no surprise.
And for a lot of these companies, this could be like healthcare data, like that's like unacceptable. So the model that, again, when it comes to retrieval, because retrieval for enterprise customers, it gives them something to see right away. It gives them somewhere to upload their data. It's kind of needed to close the deal. So if you're gonna do that, if you're gonna provide them an interface and you're gonna host that somewhere anyway, I'm saying, first of all, decouple that from everybody else's data. Give each consumer their own, each customer their own server. Doesn't have to be a huge server, right? And then give them another one hosted by a different hosting provider, and have your backups sync to the other one, right? But then take a snapshot of those and back that up to Filecoin.
Right, that's what that's your G Cloud thing,
Mhm.
which is freaking dope,
Yeah, and again, it adds redundancy and gives the consumer what they want. It decouples their data from everybody else's. That's why Saturn, like on a Saturn node, you might have data from a ton of different clients requesting data, right? I just think that
that's what you want though. You're a provider, right?
I think it creates more risk when you have multiple, especially if it's sensitive data that are, if we want to really get enterprises storing their data on Filecoin, you need some assurances, right, that this data isn't going to get hacked. And I think one of the best ways to do that is to not do like a Web3 model that's centralized where you've got, 1 million users in the same database, right? Like
especially for like large enterprise users, you kind of, to even create a system to where it would be openly serving these objects on Saturn would probably be a little difficult. Just saying, right? Yeah.
They're going to request, first of all, not all of them can even use open source code, right? So one thing that they are requesting is is there a closed source version? The other thing that they're requesting can we use our own private IPFS network, right?
Yeah.
Or a private Filecoin network even, which
SaaS, right there you go. That's perfect.
They want dedicated, right? Again, they don't care what it costs. They just need to,
That makes sense. Yeah, that would make sense.
Yeah. So, again, this is kind of one of the subjects that I brought up to the Lotus team that like, hey, this is, if Filecoin needs demand in order to grow, right? We need to be able to support these kinds of services, like snapshot backup, right? Maybe it's daily backup, maybe it's every 3 days or whatever. And right now, again, without that deal flow, like a faster deal flow, these storage providers are sitting on all of this compute power and a lot of Filecoin too. They're sitting on plenty of Filecoin to store petabytes of data, but they're not doing anything with it until they close the deal, right? And if we need retrieval in order to close the deal, right? And then with retrieval comes all these other things that you need.
That's what I was going to ask you.
It's
So
like,
how connected are those nodes that you're going to use with retrieval? Because that's the problem.
yeah, I mean, so again, if you have multiple nodes hosted by different hosting providers, your retrieval isn't really from Filecoin most of the time. Most of the time you're not retrieving from Filecoin, which again, retrieval costs fees, right? On the chain. Like Filecoin retrieval costs fees.
Yeah.
It's cheaper to have a server running, even like a 4 CPU server running 24/7.
Okay, but the problem is if you're hosting on two providers, you have Google and you're using like a service on Filecoin.
Mhm.
Okay, the Google service goes down,
Mhm.
like we've had in the past.
Mhm.
So then you try to retrieve from Filecoin. The problem is the servers are so far laid back in who knows where that you can't get to the file anyway.
What do you mean, like way back? Like,
Because they're just like the
Right.
retrievability, so it's on a JBOD, you know, 12 servers deep
Yeah.
in California when
Right.
you're in Wisconsin, you know, so.
yeah. Well, the interesting thing about how files are stored in Filecoin is they're stored in a CAR file, a content archive file, which is essentially a giant DAG, right? And with things like GraphSync, you can basically traverse that DAG and get the hash of the collection of hashes that are the binary of the file that you want, right? So if you just want a single file that's stored on in a CAR file, right? If you know what the file, if you have the CID of the file, which you should have in a database somewhere, again, why it's nice to have a server, because you might need a database to store all your CIDs, right? If you know the CID, you can basically query. You can basically grab the hash that you need, even if it's a part of this other giant hash of data, right? You can even grab even little the specific binary that you're missing, right? And that's what GraphSync and these different IPFS discovery algorithms are kind of designed to do.
I was also reading there was some experimentation with Filecoin gateways, like HTTP gateways directly to a Filecoin miner.
Yeah, there's some new. I think there's some new quick start guys on creating your own gateway.
Yeah,
Just
sounds interesting. I don't know.
basically
It's kind of what you're saying.
It's
right?
basically a Lotus
It's a
gateway.
server.
Yeah, it's a server.
Yeah.
Is it with Filecoin latencies, or?
Well, it's brand new, so I don't know.
Yeah, that's the problem. That's the
question.
problem. If it's even if it is a gateway, if it's with super slow latency because it's 10 miles back behind the server, even if it is running through GraphSync, that's Filecoin's main problem right now.
Yes.
That's what we've heard. That's what the Filecoin devs will tell you.
Your request will just time out.
Filecoin isn't good for retrieval. It's cold storage.
Unless you
But
have
that's what servers are for.
Unless you
That's
have a
what servers
Filecoin,
do.
if you have a Filecoin service, okay, if you're running Lotus on a mirrored set of 8 different nodes, every node is the same and is distributed among the globe,
Yeah.
and you're running Lotus just like everybody else, but your drives are very fast. 8,000 megabits per second in comparison to something much slower, 4 megabits per second.
Sure.
Like, you have a Filecoin service that that you can retrieve from. You ask that server a question, it's fast. So are there implementations like that?
It sounds like another blockchain.
Well,
Yeah.
no, it's not. Thank God it's not.
It's like a caching service.
It could be.
Yeah.
If it was a block, then you got a whole. Thank God you've got a bunch of Lotus people here to know what they're doing. Whereas if you create your own blockchain, you're on your own, buddy.
Wait, what you're saying is kind of like caching, right? You're just like, you basically have like a ton of.
It's just you're running Filecoin.
It's like
You're running
L2.
Filecoin,
Yeah.
just like
It's L2.
you're running Filecoin. Okay, but instead of your cost being, 10 cents per terabyte, okay, because you have a huge JBOD with 2 petabytes. You have a rack with 2 petabytes in it attached to one Intel Xeon, okay, or a dual Intel Xeon
Usually,
processor.
I think they'll have like 4 of them, like.
And I don't know how much.
160 cores or something per.
That's if it's new.
Yeah.
A lot of people, I'm sure.
Not
like,
per chip, but you'd have like 4 chips total, like 160 cores, right?
Right. That's just for the storage, or
Yeah.
that's for sealing too.
I think that's for sealing.
Right. So you only have to do that. You don't have to.
Right. No.
So
don't need it all the
so
time.
just for the retrievability, even you have 8 petabytes stacked on 1 gigabit per second if you're lucky.
Mhm.
Okay, so that's not
Sure.
So
Right.
yeah, is there people experimenting with, or is Filecoin Saturn? If you ask somebody that, you're like, hey, should I do this? They're like, just go. Saturn is the same thing that you're saying.
Yeah, well, that's the thing, exactly. Saturn is just a bunch of servers. And my thing is, who's running these servers?
Well, it's just like
somebody has to.
Filecoin is
Right.
just a bunch of servers. Those servers,
100%.
that software is
Every
fancy.
every blockchain is just a bunch of servers. And the blockchains need more nodes, right? You need more validator nodes, even if those nodes aren't miners, right? You just need validator nodes, right? To just, validate whatever your consensus is, right?
Yeah.
So like, yeah, I mean, you need servers, right? My thing is give the customer a server, because then you get a node out of it, right? So you get validation, and if you want to do a Saturn like CDN kind of thing, well, you have all these nodes, you could do that. They can opt into that if they need that service. They could even, they're already paying for the server, so they don't have to pay extra. Because eventually, again, if Filecoin is gonna, or Protocol Labs is gonna come out with these solutions because there's demand for them. People are asking, hey, we need a user interface for this, but they're gonna be paid, right? So my thing is like, why pay Protocol Labs or the Filecoin Foundation to do this when you could just go out and get your own
But nobody
providers?
Nobody wants to do that.
Well,
Yeah.
I mean, it sounds like a company could just become a provider, or
There you
either a
go.
company or a
That's
blockchain.
what
Well,
Protocol wants.
well,
That's
what
what
you-
they wish would happen.
Yeah, exactly. Well, what,
They don't have
But if
teams
they
big enough
would-
to do it.
Yeah, but a company at a sufficiently large scale would be able to do this way cheaper than anyone could on their own.
yes.
They
Well,
can. They
but
can.
here's what you also
Which one,
want.
Protocol?
Like you don't want to centralize
Other
this,
companies.
right? You don't want to centralize this. You don't want to be same issue with Azure and Web2, right? You want redundancy. You want you want decentralization, right? So different geographic locations where your nodes are. That actually also gives you a CDN of sorts.
Well,
for
it
caching
just
data.
depends on what you if you've got a grandma and you're saving 1 million photos and she only looks at the photo once a year,
Mhm.
she doesn't need geo-distributed
I agree.
latency, right? So
Right.
it's like, yeah, we've got to have plethoras of solutions,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
We've got to have if you want to post something quick, you got that solution. If you want something that's cheap, I mean, I'm talking they will give you money if you have data that you could store. Can you believe it's the inverse of cheap?
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Right.
that's a use case, NASA.
Mhm.
Finally, I've seen some big storage deals with NASA. They're like saving
Yeah.
those big data sets.
Right. Right.
Thank God, but.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, again.
And then putting the compute, because then, you know, Alex and I were hearing about back layout, right? So they have those big compute servers laying around.
Yes.
So if you've got that compute server laying around and you're not sealing like you should,
Right.
and you've got a bunch of data sitting there,
Yep.
then you might as well compute over that data, right?
I was gonna ask about that. I was gonna let you kind of get through retrieval, but
Yeah, I mean, yeah, there's so many really interesting use cases, but again, I think as a storage provider today, the model where you're not committing you're sitting on all this storage, right? That nobody's using. You're not making it available to the network until you sign a deal. That means deal flow is slow. Like that whole process is just slow, right? And none of the things that we're talking about really equate to like increase in Filecoin demand. I think as long as the storage providers are basically incentivized in the way that they are right now, which is conserve my resources because there's not enough demand, so sit on my resources, right, and work on really, really big clients like NASA, right? But that's not going to create the demand that we need to get Filecoin to go up, right? We need Filecoin's supposed to be a 24/7 marketplace for storage deals, right? We want to compete with other cloud providers. There's a whole cloud provider, cloud storage market out there, public companies, right? It's a huge market cap. We need to compete in that market. That means we need to provide the same kind of services that they do, or we're not going to compete.
Yeah, the math goes, our data is, everybody's data, or the world's data doubles every year.
Yeah.
So if we're doubling our data every year, we should be doubling the deal flow in Filecoin every year too, but I don't know if we are.
And actually, that was one of the things I was like really surprised about is, so I became a Filecoin storage provider, right? I spent all this money on the hardware, on the actual collateral itself. We got everything online, right? You're trying to fix all these bugs and stuff with your system, right? Getting everything online. And then there's no list of people who need deals that I can go to and be like, yeah, I'll bid on that deal. I can't, there's no marketplace where I can just tap in and say, hey, I've got this storage available, and it matches me with the client, right? It's not automated. You have to go out, knock on doors.
They've got a website.
What do you think about big data exchange?
Yeah,
I know it's kind of small, but it seems like it's kind of a marketplace. It's kind of more.
Yeah, we need more of those.
Yeah.
To be plugged in. That's what we're missing right now, I think, is these demand pools. Where is the demand, right? Get as much of that demand in one place so all of the storage providers can plug into that place and pull those deals in. Because again, it's tough, especially when I first started, you could actually survive without storing any deals, but just living off of block rewards, right? But you can't do that now, and you're actually losing money if you don't have Filecoin Plus deals. And that's what you don't want is all these storage providers who have spent all this time and money investing in the hardware that you need to run this, losing money and then not being able to provide anything to the network, right? So it's
a rubber band effect.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's exciting that I do think that Baklaya, the whole compute over data, that seems to
Compute
be.
over data
I think
is
that'll
gonna be
drive a lot of
huge.
demand for Filecoin
It will.
storage because now you can actually do something with your data
You
on
couldn't.
Filecoin.
You could never do that.
It will, but
You
first,
could never do that with video.
exactly. But first you need the data to be on Filecoin for
Yeah.
you to compute over it.
Mhm.
right?
But it might be easier to sell it. I'm just saying, you know what I mean? For you can tell
Yes.
them we've got this. You can
Yes.
now you can host your whole app on this.
Yes, but they're also going to ask for retrieval, and they're also going to
Yeah.
ask for
So-
all these other things, right?
Yeah.
So yeah,
Because the other thing too that I brought up, real quick, that I brought up to the Lotus team. Again, I had a meeting with the entire Lotus team was in Austin a couple weeks ago, and Yeah.
I know they didn't tell anybody, I guess. I guess it must have been a secret meeting,
I guess, yeah.
I had a secret meeting too.
Yeah. And one thing I brought up to them is like, there are regulations like GDPR where if a customer comes to you and says, delete my data, you have to comply with that and within a certain amount of time.
Yeah,
You can't do that on Filecoin right now.
Oh, the protocol doesn't even support it.
No, you
You literally can't, I mean, the minimum deal duration is 6 months right
Yeah.
now.
So
how are we supposed to get these clients
yeah, that was asked.
that need to, you know?
That was asked at the Filecoin Meetup or whatever last year or a year ago, I don't know when, and they said that as a service provider, like what is done if that happens, because
Right.
that's happened before.
Oh, yes.
You turn off all retrievability. You basically strike out.
Call
And-
it zap. They zap the sector.
But
Make
you're still
it-
storing it.
You're still storing it.
Yeah.
That is the problem.
Because you don't
You're
want to
still storing
invalidate
it.
your certificate, right? But
Yeah, and so my suggestion was like, again, shorter deal durations is a good idea. I understand most miners don't have short-term deals in their, like, that's not really what they're going after. They're going after long-term deals that are really big amounts of data, right? But there's way more demand for shorter-term deals. I think you'll get way more, you know, probably less volume size deals, but way more of them. And I think that would give us the scale. If you shorten that minimum deal duration to like 3 days, then, you know, if the sector expires in 3 days, I'll zap it for now, so it's unavailable, and then it's deleted in 3 days. Like that would probably comply.
I think GDPR compliance, it just has to be deleted in 30 days.
30 days.
So
yeah.
I would think 15 days would probably
Yeah.
be sufficient.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, anything shorter than 6 months. How's it going? Help yourself to pizza or anything. We're almost done. We're gonna open it up to other questions here. Yeah, so again, those were some of the things I brought up to the Lotus team. These are some of the things that they brought up that they are discussing and they wanted to kind of get our input on, which is a new window post design, which is, if you look at the Filecoin improvement proposals, there's a link to it at the bottom here. The window post is one of the first steps in the sealing process. And again, window post is kind of finicky. You know, it takes a ton of resources. They're talking about improving the challenge generation so that it can't be, I think right now it can kind of be gamed a bit because it's based on the order of the challenges. So if you have a bunch of sectors that need sealed, which if you have a petabyte of data, I think that's like 16,000 sectors or something crazy like that, maybe even more. So you have a ton of sectors. Each sector has to be sealed, and it's usually 32 gig sectors, sometimes 64. Those are the only two options. The order in which the sectors are sealed is how the proof challenges. The hashes or the algorithms that generate the proof challenges are based on basically the order that they're received in. So they're talking about decoupling them completely, so they're totally not based on each other, so that, you know, a third party can't like try to like game it so that they give the system sectors in a specific order to give them like some kind of desired output.
So due to operational expense, we'll decouple it, but you're gonna process more.
Yeah, again, I don't, you know, another thing that they're working on, of course, is more efficient proofs. Like, we need these, like, it's important that the proofs be very, robust, and that they take a lot of resources, because that is part of what secures the blockchain and ensures, good actors, I think. These proofs, you're basically talking about encryption, right? This encryption is like the most badass encryption ever. It can take weeks to do some of this calculation depending on your hardware, right? Like if you have a really badass system, I think maybe you're doing like 50 terabytes a day. It's fast. Sorry. 50 tips a day. That can take you a few weeks if you've got a few petabytes of data, right? So even with a supercomputer that costs you $90,000 or something, right? So yeah, they want to make it more efficient. But what you're also seeing is kind of sealing as a service is really starting to take over, because sealing is so resource intensive that it's like, okay, I'm not going to pay that 90 grand, but somebody else already did, so I'll just use their sealing cluster. Have them, send my sectors over there, and they'll seal it for me, and then my miner can, basically
Chill.
Yeah. My miner can claim the rewards, right? Reap the rewards, but we don't have to use our resources for that. So that's becoming more and more popular. The other one to really want to get into real quick is Ribs. But before I do that, I'll just talk about the other one. So there is Lotus ARM support working in testnets, which is really interesting. And then again, they did say that they're working on publishing more reference architecture, so that new providers, when they're looking at, what hardware should I be investing in, and what can I expect my return on that investment to look like over time? How much electricity is this going to cost? All those kinds of things. It would be nice if the Lotus team provided, some references, so people could at least see, for a 1 petabyte setup with this architecture, here's your return, right? And there are some, I think definitely the ESPA team has a really nice spreadsheet that gives you a lot of flexibility in terms of plugging in different kinds of processors into your miner setup. So if you're interested in that, I would talk to the ESPA team, but it's definitely something that's needed, I think, is more reference architectures. And then this is something I really want to touch on. It is very, very, sorry guys. It is very much in development. Oh, damn it. Let's see if I can full screen this. So, there's one developer on the Lotus team, his name's Magic, or he goes by Magic. He's working on this repository called Ribs, which is such an interesting project that I think not a lot of people know about, but it's really important because basically he's created almost like a fork of IPFS that stores the files in what is essentially a CAR format natively. So you don't really have to do the whole data prep thing. Like one of the teams, Delta, they spent a ton of time making CAR generation more efficient, right? Because it does take a while to generate CAR files. Ribs totally gets rid of the need for any of that because
it's IPFS.
It's IPFS native.
Like
they want to implement it into Kubo eventually. Yes. But I mean, we can read some of this. Let me make it bigger for you. Yeah, so really interesting. Again, this is total work in progress. This is like brand new stuff. But it even says don't store any data on here. Yeah, so let's go down to key features.
But does it work with the public IPFS network? It can.
I'm not sure. I think it might. It says Filecoin native IPFS nodes, right? So RIBs can be integrated into most IPFS nodes seamlessly thanks to a layer that implements the standard block store interface. RIBs also provides a high-performance block interface for efficient data management. As a scalable block store, RIBs is designed to support 100 petabyte plus deployments, providing a scalable solution for distributed storage systems that can grow alongside your requirements. Improved data locality and parallelism. RIBs groups blocks into log files, which in many scenarios provides good data locality and are very easy to convert into Filecoin deal-friendly format. And it fully automates the Filecoin data offloading. So when block groups become full, RIBs automatically backs them up to Filecoin by converting them into a car file, computing deal CID, selecting storage providers, and making the deals. RIBs will also provide an offloading mechanism which will make it possible to free up space on the local storage by removing the backed up blocks and fetching them from Filecoin when needed. So it's like fully automated Filecoin backup and retrieval, almost, but built into IPFS, which is, again, so IPFS, I believe, uses ZFS. It's a file system, right? It hashes the binaries. The binaries are stored in ZFS. The DAG is stored in Filecoin, or on the Filecoin network. Like Filecoin is it's a peer-to-peer network. You need peers, and essentially, so again, right now, if you want to take something from Filecoin from IPFS to Filecoin, you have to generate the car file. Well, what this does is, it's instead of storing in ZFS, you're storing, I believe, as a log file that is basically in the same format as a car file. So when you want to generate a car file, it's already pretty much there. So you don't have to do this calculation to generate the car file, because when you're storing the data to begin with, it's already in basically that format, right? So it's a more Filecoin native storage.
Is that person
on IPFS? That's Magic. He's on the Lotus team.
He's on the Slack.
He's on the Slack. Yeah. He's easy to talk to. But one thing that was also really interesting, because again, when I was talking about, it'd be nice to have shorter duration deal times, and it'd be nice to have a snapshotting, mechanism where I can take a snapshot of a server every day. I don't need to store the entire snapshot over again. I just need to basically do a diff between today and yesterday and just store the diff. Well, Magic said this system will basically do that for you, where you don't have to, it'll do the diff for you, but you don't have to have a shorter deal duration or sector duration. The sectors can remain the same, but you can basically push and pull, more data to those sectors when you need it. Again, this is so early, and I think even Magic probably doesn't have all of it figured out. But I do know I learned about this at ESPA in April, and so now it's June, and it has progressed honestly like a good deal since April.
Just the fact that it was the Carabao thing, it's like already cool.
I think
Yeah, right.
the fact it takes the entire deal prep stage out, because I mean, my company, we have to, you know, that's overhead for us on our servers, right? Every time we want to store something on Filecoin, I think it's a great way to go. Like it sounds from an architecture standpoint like appealing.
Are deals just published to the blockchain?
The deals are, yeah.
So then it just goes and searches the blockchain for deals, open deals, and
No, so
Yeah, if you get a deal, after you find it, it's then broadcasted to
Yes,
the chain.
yes.
Oh, okay.
You gotta find the deal.
right.
yeah, I was about. Well, how does it automate?
It should. It does.
Finding deals.
None of it's automated. Oh, this does. Apparently, this selects the SPs for you. I don't know how it. Like again, a lot
Where's
of
your
this.
list of SPs coming from?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
The secret status.
Yeah. I mean,
Right? It's his SPs. It's his magic.
a lot of this might just
Or
be
maybe it's
like,
open source, you can be any SP.
you know, there might not even be any implementation for that yet. He's just saying this is what it's going to
Right,
do.
maybe we
You
don't.
know. But it is really interesting, and there is an interface for it actually, which is pretty cool. Yeah, so I thought that was noteworthy and wanted to share that with you. But
That's crazy.
yeah, so anyway, really interesting meeting the entire Lotus team. They were also talking about like they invited us to stay the whole day, which is cool. Like sit in on their meetings. They were talking about FBM and man, all kinds of things. Unfortunately, I couldn't stay the whole day, but I probably should have. You know, like it was really interesting. There's probably 20 of them or something like that. So yeah, that's pretty much all I have. I would like to also remind you guys just to join our Slack if you have any topics you want to talk about. Fill out our survey, please. It really helps us. All of these slides are on GitHub and on austinorbit.io. So you can always find it there. Our GitHub is on there.
I'm gonna check out Ribs for sure. That
Yeah,
sounds really cool.
it really, Ribs I think has a lot of promise, so we'll see where it goes.
Maybe move back to the Slack.
Sorry, oh yeah. Sorry. And I think right now we're just gonna leave it open. You know, if you guys have any questions about Filecoin mining or like being a storage provider, happy to answer any of that stuff. I actually have a couple questions for you, Frank. I had a couple of questions for you. I had some interesting topics.
I feel like it would be good to open the floor.
Yeah,
Just
yeah.
get everybody.
Yeah,
talking.
exactly. I agree. So, yeah, open discussion if you guys.
I had a secret meeting too.
Woo! So Frank, if anybody doesn't know, you've been coming to the meetings a bunch. Let's just get your background. I wanted to figure out what everybody. We get Dalwick comes a lot. We have a lot of like members who come, and it'll be good to we do a lot of developer stuff, but it's good to be broad as well, to do everything, not just straight developer stuff.
Well, I'm a software engineer for Amazon.
Awesome. Oh, cool. Okay.
There was like last week, AWS Lambda went out and US East won. And that was when I was like, oh, I guess I can't rely on this cloud.
Wow. That's hilarious.
Yeah, everything you've been hearing here started to make more sense.
Yeah.
So that's cool. So what team do you work on?
I'm in Whole Foods engineering work.
Oh hell yeah. Okay. That's
So I wasn't blamed for the outage. I was just
You were a contributor.
I was just having trouble as a result of the outage.
Right. Awesome. That's cool. I'm from Amazon too. So I was tenured there. I spent a whole year. And so are you tenured yet or?
Year? Is that what they call tenure now?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. If you make it 1 year, you're tenure at Amazon.
Oh, I think our org has a lot of tenure because it's so chill.
Oh wow.
There's so I've been there since October, and they're probably going to see much lower, what's it called, turnover because everyone's frozen. Like, where are you going to go if you're at Amazon? You can't go to Google, they're frozen.
Yeah. Yeah.
You can't go to Facebook, they're probably frozen.
Oh no, Facebook, they're letting people go like they're kicking people off the boat like it's, you know.
Yeah.
So
Hell yeah. Love to have a Amazonian here.
And I was actually curious about, like, I saw in the SEC lawsuit, Filecoin is labeled as a security. I'm like, yeah, they did the ICO.
The ETF,
They're-
I believe, was labeled as which basically means they are considered Filecoin a security. But it's really, the ETF offering was like an illegal sale of securities, right?
Yeah. But that's as much, I would think maybe Filecoin's maybe only slightly more because it's newer than Ethereum. Because both did ICOs. And
Yeah,
so-
well, what was nice about the Filecoin ICO is my family invested in the initial ICO. And a part of purchasing those tokens was the SAFT agreement, which is like safe, I forget what it stands for now.
So agreement for future tokens.
Safe agreement for future tokens, right? Basically, it's the kind of contract you would sign if you were purchasing a security. So they did everything to SEC regulations, basically like foreshadowing this, that SEC would eventually, knock on their door saying that they're a security. So luckily, when they did their ICO, they followed all the regulations. So I don't really see a ton of issues from that standpoint. It's more all of the, like, anybody who's generated revenues with Filecoin, which is a good number of people, and like filed their taxes, and didn't account for Filecoin as a security, they're gonna have to like amend those taxes, or it creates a whole lot of hiccups. But yeah, at least they invented the SAFT agreement, which I think was a really,
Or like the guys from like, what is it, the LTX, they're like, we live in Puerto Rico. It doesn't matter.
Yeah, I mean, that's the other thing. I mean,
Yeah, the population of Puerto Rico doubles overnight.
Yeah.
And they're all Filecoin miners.
Yeah, no, they literally have like I forget what they told me, they have like a server running physically in Puerto Rico, so that like anything that gets generated from that technically was generated there, so it doesn't get taxed in the States.
I'm sure they got a few of those. I have
Well,
one.
like Puerto Rico's part of the United States, it's just, there's no federal tax.
Right.
If you're a resident, so.
So okay, so you're actively in the news of Filecoin and everything. You're like,
Well, I mean, I'm not too closely following Filecoin. That's why, like, I'm still like asking questions about, like, I didn't know that all the deals was like off chain, like deal posting,
Right.
negotiations, and you only put it on
Right.
chain once you
most
finalize
storage
your-
providers
as a
don't figure
contract.
that out.
It's
Right.
like
No,
some back alley deal.
it turns out that the Protocol Labs is a very vastly large network, and when you get into the, higher echelon, it's amazing how difficult. You're hosting. Think about what all the crazy stuff that Amazon goes through to make sure. If you're holding your data on Glacier, you don't even want to know how much stuff they have to make sure that what you're holding is what it should be there. They have a lot of routines and a lot of protocols that they are following, right?
Yeah.
This is the same. This is a huge system that's actually decentralized.
And it must not go down. Like,
Yeah.
And it still does, right?
Right.
You're right.
Must
yeah.
not. Yeah.
Right.
Well,
And so it's impressive. It's impressive to see. I think it's cool that you're here.
Yeah.
If you talk to the people at Amazon about IPFS and Filecoin, they're always like, tell me more about that.
That sounds cool.
Yeah, they're like, how does that work?
Yeah.
They're like, oh, or they're like, oh. So, is it your first time you showed up?
Yes, I just met
Yeah.
them
Oh, nice.
downstairs.
Yeah.
Nice.
There's a LLM, training and improving, or using and improving LLMs meetup
Okay.
on the 8th floor, and then there's Fiesta on the
Right.
first.
Nice.
So they had a lot of people.
Have you guys experimented with any of that?
The what? The LLMs?
Everyone
Yeah,
uses
modifying your
RSVP.
LLMs, yeah.
We haven't modified them.
No, I don't modify. Didn't get any time.
Or just working with them at all? Have you
just-
hosted your
yeah,
own?
No.
No?
I had done
Not
some
yet.
hacks.
Yeah, it's amazing that you can host this. When we first got this crap, you needed a Threadripper, you needed 3 Threadrippers and then the newest MacBook to collate it all, to run it, you know, and now they've got Llama. Have you guys heard about Llama?
Yeah.
You can run that thing on an Intel
toaster.
You can run it on your toaster. Yeah, literally. And play video games at the same and it's 98% of what ChatGPT is. It's amazing.
Right, yeah.
Yeah. All just CPU, no GPU yet? Yeah.
I saw someone put it on a Raspberry Pi. I was like, come on.
Oh, that's
awesome.
that's you know.
So are you all developers?
Most of us, I think.
Yeah, we work together, and then he's got a company in the ecosystem, and then Dante's also got a company in the ecosystem.
Wait, you went to Amazon, right?
Yeah, I'm an ex-Amazonian.
Oh, oh shit!
That's why.
What would you do? Whose team were you on?
I was in a garbage ass team, I think,
Okay.
which did not earn money.
Oh.
Got laid off, and then had to get a job somewhere to keep my visa status. So I'm now in one of the companies for, and it's a really good company apparently. Blue Cross Blue Shield. We roll
It's a great
out all
company.
these-
Of course, steady. That's
Yeah,
steady.
it's a
Medical
very
insurance.
stable company, and I did not expect it to have really good technology, but
Oh, they
people.
do. Yeah, it's medical data.
Mhm.
And it's like the most important stuff.
Yeah, they're one of the biggest, I think top 3 in the country.
Yeah.
There's,
It's like everybody probably knows that name. Yeah.
Yeah.
yeah, that's awesome.
Oh yeah.
Cool. Have you experimented with IPFS or Filecoin at all?
Oh, I have done a lot of lead code, nothing else.
Okay.
Oh,
Just
lead code.
changing jobs, nothing else.
Oh nice.
Yeah, no worries.
Lead
But
code's the
now
best.
maybe I have some time, so
Yeah, basically it's a redo of the internet. Can you believe that?
yeah.
He's like, yeah, I can
Mhm.
actually.
The
That's,
fact is, like, do you watch like CoffeeZilla and do you know that YouTuber?
Yeah.
Who?
CoffeeZilla.
Oh.
I don't know
think so.
about
Yeah,
CoffeeZilla.
yeah.
Of course.
And the up and coming somewhat copycat that's friendly with CoffeeZilla, Scott Schaefer.
Who?
Scott Schaefer, he does other investigative journalism on YouTube.
I think he featured in one of the videos.
Yeah.
I think so.
CoffeeZilla is the OG crypto investigator.
Investigating.
Mhm.
Oh, yeah?
He has got a lot of
He's
scams.
not an investigator.
He's
He
just.
hires some people.
He's an investigation aggregator.
He's a-
Oh,
he's a
see, you know what's going on.
He's an investigation storyteller.
You're a smart guy. So yeah, we feel like we should have you guys get up here next month, okay? And you guys talk about what the hell you wake up in the morning and do, okay? Because yeah, it's like we get up here and we talk about our shit, you know, but who cares? Okay, we're redoing the internet here, and the only way you do that is with everybody else. And so, yeah, I feel like you guys gotta come up. We gotta come up for you especially, but you got up here. I wasn't here.
Yeah, we missed that.
Yeah, you missed it.
See,
Yeah.
I'll get up again.
Yeah.
you gotta
please.
get up again.
Yeah,
You
actually,
gotta,
and I have a question, so I think we only have like 10 minutes left, but I had a question because I had an issue with video on IPFS that maybe if it's not protected information, maybe you can help, right?
Oh no,
This is all open source. If somebody's got protected information, we'll beat it out of it.
It's not true. There is closed source in this community.
No, this is all
Um,
source.
Yeah, so, okay, so we've got this system. It gives you an IPFS node, and then it also has a database, right? The database stores the CIDs. The IPFS stores the binaries, right? So you upload, we have an upload button, you upload a video, right? And so there's a back-end server running, and there's a front-end container running, right? They could both be on the same server, right? The front end is built in Flutter, okay? Which we implemented a a video player in Flutter, right? When you go to play the video with this kind of standard Flutter like plugin, right? It plays the video, but when you try to seek within the video, it starts it all the way back to the beginning. But if you use a video file that's not stored in IPFS, it works perfectly fine. Have you run into issues?
Yeah. That's why any file that people upload on our thing, we have to transcode it. Because when you transcode it, it slices it up into 1,000 pieces. You create the car file so it knows how to find and reference itself.
I got it.
So then it's like you have to think like seeking is basically like you're trying to go over chunks. It's trying to go over the whole video.
Right. That's
It can't do that.
Yes.
There's no buffer big enough on the browser,
Right,
so
yeah.
it tries to go back to the beginning.
Mhm.
That happens almost everywhere too. Like Apple TV apps, Google
Right,
Chrome apps, like
yeah.
everywhere. Like because it's like one big file that doesn't know how.
Yeah, exactly.
What do you transcode to?
HLS.
HLS.
Yeah.
And your player is actually reading the car file, like, or so you guys are
It's reading the car file, and then it basically decodes the HLS
Stream.
So
stream. Wow,
entirely, yeah.
cool.
the back end decodes the car and then makes it as if the front end is receiving a normal
The
file.
front end will.
The front,
decode it.
the front end will decode.
Yeah, JavaScript or something.
Yeah.
I'm thinking cool.
It's, I mean, we're actually gonna try to actually update it now that what is it, Web GPU now?
Oh yeah.
Is like,
WebSockets.
No, Web
No.
GPU, no, it's different.
Don't you have to enable it like WebSockets though, right?
No, it's
WebSockets are enabled
it's
by
gonna be,
Chrome.
it's gonna be part of Chrome. Like, I don't think it's gonna
Really?
be special.
So what's different about that?
Because Web GPU, it'll give us a lot more performance, because we can render the
OpenCL.
the individual frames a lot better.
Mm-hmm.
So that we'll be able to even get up to like 12K video.
Wow.
Like
All in the browser.
native
Yeah.
12K
native
60.
rendered
Wow.
12K,
Nice.
12K 120. Yeah.
Jeez.
Well, but you cannot do that like outside of the browser. How could you do that in the browser?
That's what I'm trying to say. It's like it's Web GPU. It's like it's.
If you had a codec to where you could use your GPU locally on your desktop,
Yeah, it'll
do
burn a
it.
hole. It'll burn a hole in your
Actually,
system.
Yeah, you got an RTX 4080.
Well, does Web GPU offer other silicon accelerators on the GPU, like NVENC, NVIDIA encoder,
NVLink, right?
NVENC, ENC.
Oh wait, yeah.
Yeah,
There's
I don't
like
know.
NVIDIA has their like proprietary encoder thing.
Yeah, I don't know, because I just done it on Mac, so I don't know exactly like what.
Yeah, like that has H.264 and hardware H.264 and 5 decoders.
I just
Yeah.
one point. How do you know about all these things? Like,
Well,
we're geeks.
When
I've
we
done-
were
I've done
when we were
video.
10 years old, we sat in computer class and it's all we did.
I've done like
Long
videos
journey.
for like 12 years.
oh my god.
Yeah, so like,
Yeah, Frank, tell us about Hypermedia. Tell us a little bit just about you. We have like a couple minutes left.
basically it's IPFS based video. Yeah, it's Hypermedia.
You did a demo during
Yeah.
one of the
Yeah.
Filecoin.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
By the way, we've been plugging Hypermedia all over the place.
Nice.
what's wrong with your domain here?
No, it's my internet.
It's the
I'm coming at you. I must have
Are
my
you
stuff
not
now
on
some
Capital
wrong.
Factory members?
No, I'm
I think it's.
I got it.
The password is like center of gravity or something.
I think it was center of gravity. Yeah.
not. I got it now.
I don't believe it. No.
You scan the QR.
Mine works, then I don't know.
My other computer works.
Yeah, that's the thing. We sourced that 12K 120 video.
I think it was center of gravity.
Try transcode that shit with all the Mac variants.
Oh,
Trying to see if
nice.
we can get an IPFS.
So we already, I thought we already had something like WebGPU, like with WebGL. I thought there, I swear I saw
Yeah.
a video from years ago
Yeah, WebGL.
that used
but-
WebGL for compute.
Yeah, but it's like,
It was kind of difficult because you have to like fetch stuff from a buffer.
yeah,
So this
But-
video is actually
yeah, that's on IPFS,
an IPFS-based video player.
on this janky Wi-Fi.
Yeah, on my phone's Wi-Fi.
Yeah.
And
It can make it
Phone's
faster.
Wi-Fi is faster than like a building Wi-Fi.
I think
This
it
is
probably
better than Big Tooth or Bucktooth Bunny or whatever.
Yeah, look at how cool this is.
It's-
Now, can we seek on this video?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, you can.
Yes, you can.
So this is
Seek past the buffer.
Okay,
now you're trying to play.
Yeah.
He's
Oh no.
You
just had to do it.
It's the shitty Wi-Fi, okay?
Yeah, that's
you got
right.
it.
It's the
You
network.
got it.
It's the network.
It's the buffer.
If you're
Hey, just no.
if he had a new MacBook, it would be running,
This
okay?
is ARM, yeah.
Look at this though, a lot of IPFS.
Yeah,
Alright,
man,
I
that's-
dare you to try to find that.
Yeah,
That's
seriously.
Use Helium.
Are you
Helium
using
network.
the staggered?
Yeah, the thing that you told me about.
Yeah.
The staggered DAG.
Did that make any difference? Do you think?
It helped me get to the first bit. So,
Faster, right?
Yeah, that's actually like super important with video.
Yeah.
What's the staggered DAG?
Yeah. There's
Yeah.
different ways of
Yeah.
structuring the DAG. So like it can either traverse the entire file, which actually builds the DAG from the bottom up, right? So you start with all these, all the binary at the bottom. You have to basically read all the binary, chunk it, and then you're kind of building pyramids of hashes all the way up. Or you have the staggered approach where you take the first chunk, you don't read the entire file, you just take the first chunk, and that becomes the top. The binary for the first chunk is the top part, and then the next one is like a layer down. And so it's kind of like this,
It's like more sequential, like easier
Yeah.
to find.
It makes sense for
it's more of a graduated, I think.
Oh, so it's
Yeah.
like the one where you could read it in sequentially with the constant time, like
Time to
search
first
tree,
byte, time to
binary
first
tree.
byte
Have
is
you
way
guys seen
faster.
what? Have you guys seen what?
We gotta
what-
back up.
What the Fleek network guys doing?
Not recently, I haven't checked in.
So like Fleek network is trying to do like a CDN stuff.
Oh, really?
Like,
It's
but
insider.
but it uses Akash. It uses like.
a hot.
Really?
Yeah, it uses
No, it's not.
Yeah, why is it better?
Akash, IPFS, Filecoin, and Arweave.
Oh, wow. That's
CDN.
funky.
Where have I heard of Koch before?
That sounds like reason we say it's better than stack.
Yeah, it's like a decentralized compute network.
Yeah, it's like a. Yeah,
So like.
it's like decentralized
front.
Docker.
When is your next event here?
Next event will be in approximately 30 days.
Next event is July 18th,
July 18th.
Tuesday, every third Tuesday of the month.
Definitely. This is much better than the other
And
event here.
take some beer, take some pizza with you,
Yeah,
please.
we've got pizza, we've got whatever, yeah.
Snacks, there's plenty.
Hell yeah. Same. Yeah, basically we're just like hyper devs like you, just like you.
What are you, like, you know about video for that and what other technologies you know?
Yeah, so he's on video. I think that's really cool. He's on like just hosting in general. Alex and I, we've got a few projects. One of them is a link in bio.
Everyone for coming also.
So link in
Great to
bio,
see
like
everybody.
kind of like you know what Linktree is? Linktree? Yeah. Yeah, it's called openlinks.io. It's a